You know, you can tell when you have a Marine at the controls of the sounds of this program. Sergeant Brian Altheimer, United States Marine Corps, Ready Reserve at the moment, is, and I like to remind him of that as we're sitting on the precipice of a wreck, is standing by, playing all the music, and he's introducing Colonel Oliver North, famed Marine, onto the program.
I am standing at attention. And not only because of Brian, not only because of that song, but in Chicago is my former radio operator, who is a very brave man, wounded in wounded in Vietnam, literally walked beside me the length of a handset cord for, almost 9 months. Came back to the States, took the GI Bill, graduated from Loyola, became a really world-famous dentist and oral surgeon. And So here's my message to Chicago. If you ever need your teeth worked on by a really brave Marine radio operator, you call Dr. Jim Leonard, and he will take care of you.
Wow.
There you go.
That's an unsolicited plug right there. Or solicited. I'm not sure which.
He paid for that in blood, I can tell you.
That's the ultimate. So Oliver North's got a new book out, Counterfeit Lies, which is a novel. We'll get into that in just a little bit because it's a novel based on, some real stuff.
That's happening right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, and, let's talk about what's happening right now because we had Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who, as you are probably aware, is an Air Force officer also. And he is suggesting to the president that if they were going to do anything about the devolving situation, the dangerously devolving situation in Iraq, where we believe that we may be just hours away from the fall of Baghdad to some very, very, very bad guys, that he would like to support airstrikes there, drone and even F-16 strikes. What's your thought on that, Colonel?
Well, it's too late. I do think that we are on the edge of a reprise of Saigon 75. I know that there's a lot of people jumping through hoops right now because nobody at the White House seemed to be paying any attention to this. The five-sided wastebasket, the Pentagon was apparently blissfully unaware, but there were people in Kuwait who were paying attention and out there in the Fifth Fleet. And so they're scrambling right now to make sure that, one, all the classified information inside that enormous embassy is destroyed. They're trying to make sure that they have a plan at least to get people out as far as Kuwait. And as I think everybody now knows, much of the city of Baghdad is fleeing south because it's the only direction they can go. You've got the Peshmerga that has now taken charge in Kurdistan. They've just taken over the city of Kirkuk, and they're going to stop anybody from going north. You've got the city of Fallujah and soon Ramadi, all in the hands of one of the most radical elements that's ever been. And you're now looking, people are talking about airstrikes. You can't be bombing these enormous columns full of civilians fleeing right along with the ISIS terrorists who are on the way south. And so I don't see how you can do airstrikes on these guys because you've got so many civilians intermingled among them. And this is, I know there's very few of your listeners that are old enough to remember this, but when Seoul, Korea collapsed in June 25th of 1950, okay? So here we are on another one of these terrible anniversaries.
Right.
There were literally millions of people who fled, and the North Korean army was right mixed among them. And so you put in an emergency reaction force to help. You put in all kinds of airstrikes. None of it helped until they got to a tiny little perimeter at Pusan. And they finally were able to come around from Pusan and from actually Marines sent all the way from the States, landed in China and start coming in behind enemy lines and drove all the way north. And then the Chinese came into the war.
Yeah.
Now, this administration told us that they were going to end this war responsibly. Every American wanted to get out. I mean, it's not every American, but certainly their message.
There was no political support for it, Colonel. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, and we now are looking at a major disaster in a country where we lost over 4,400 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and I think it's a damn travesty. Forgive my French.
That's all right. I agree with you. And what we have, and as you're pointing out here, this ISIS, which stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, it's leading from Syria. The entire de-evolution of what happened in Syria now, and then this is the northern part of Syria. It sort of starts in the town of Aleppo. If you look at a map in Aleppo, and it goes up north into this Kurdish area where the Kurds would wish to have Kurdistan, that is part of Turkey, part of Syria, part of northern Iraq. And they've basically swept their way down and pushed the Kurds out of the way here too, who were, as we'll all recall, were very helpful to us in the beginning of the Iraq War.
Oh, you got it right. And what you're now seeing is the Kurds are going to make sure that this Kurdistan area of Iraq is at least secure. And you're right. Kurdistan itself, if it existed as a state, would not only be part of Iraq, part of Syria, part of Turkey, and Iran. And so this is probably the first step to asserting total autonomy in the northern part of Iraq. Lord knows what's going to happen with the Turks. I think that here's the strange.
Well, that's the big question, Colonel. And let me ask you this, because obviously, for your many, many years of following this stuff, both in and out of the government, the Turkish situation is interesting because Turkey obviously was our greatest real military and cultural ally in the Islamic world.
Yeah, well, it's part of NATO.
And, right, exactly, part of NATO, and it is. It's been a bulkhead against a lot of the craziness that is in the Middle East for the United States and for Western Europe.
Until Erdogan became, who's a Muslim Brotherhood guy, put him in charge.
Right. So now that's the question. Does Turkey fall?
I don't know. I don't. What I do know is that it's very unlikely that Iraq is going to recover. Think of this. What could possibly happen is that the Iranians, which are now assembling east of Hila, if you look at the map of Iraq, you can see there's an Iranian Quds force and an IRGC regiment forming up, perhaps just to try to save Maliki. I don't know. He's their boy. But it may be, you think of this, if the Americans needed to do a Saigon style evacuation of our embassy and the Americans that are left in the city, it could be the Iranians who arranged that for us. Go figure that out.
Well, okay. Well, isn't that funny? We full circle sort of back to your history and understanding that part of the world.
Well, it segues right into this book, because this book is all about how the Iranians are going to get nuclear weapons because we're going to let them.
And do you think that Counterfeit Lies is the name of the book, by the way, out today. It is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of Heroes Proved, Oliver North, who's on with us. And so back to Iran.
Yeah.
Is Iran, I mean, this whole, the brinksmanship of everything that we're looking at right here, Colonel, is really about Iran's influence in Syria, Iran's influence in Iraq, Iran's influence trying to spread west, trying to spread east and south, because they do not like they sit just miles off the coast of the Arabian Peninsula. They're not friendly with any of the states there particularly.
Oh.
Isn't the whole plan here to basically be able to for Iran to take Saudi, take Iraq, take Syria, take Pakistan, and take eventually Afghanistan to get to Pakistan?
Up until this week, with the collapse of the Maliki government and the military in Iraq, I would have said the likelihood of them taking over without a nuclear weapon is taking over in the Saudi Peninsula, the Persian Gulf area, is remote at best. I would have said it would have had to wait until they had the nuclear weapons that this book shows how they're going to get. But the bottom line of it is that today is that Iran may be the only way to save Maliki personally and his entourage. They'd flee across the Iranian border. And of course, the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, is an old Persian, Indian, Sanskrit language and ancient Urdu saying, a proverb. And so you're looking at a situation where Iran may be able to broker not only getting nuclear weapons because of what we're doing right now in secret meetings in Geneva with them, they may also be able to find a way to build some trust, as it were, among some of their neighbors who otherwise are building their own nuclear weapons because they don't want to get nuked. And they know that the Iranians, because everybody out there has read what the Iranians have written and they've listened to what the Iranians have said, just like nobody paid attention to Mein Kampf when Hitler wrote it while he was in jail in 1923. But by 1935, they were wishing to hell that they'd paid attention because he actually did what he said he was going to do. The Iranians will do what they've been saying they're going to do since 1979 when the Ayatollah Khomeini came back. And so whatever arrangements are made to get Americans out of Iraq, to save whatever they can out of there as this ISIS come down, because the ISIS Sunni rebellion is what Iran has been fighting against. And so they're now looking for, let's see, maybe I can find an ally somewhere else in this part of the world that doesn't want to go down the same way Maliki's going right now.
So do you, can I hold you over for a few minutes here? I'll take a real quick break. Yes. Oliver North is with us. Counterfeit Lies is the book that is out right now. Go get it where all fine books are sold, the internet.
We got about 7 minutes.
All right. Hold on one second. We'll come right back to Colonel Oliver North. Colonel Oliver North is with us on the Super Celebrity Hotline. He's got a new book out, Counterfeit Lies, which is a novel, but based on something that's really happening in the world in the Middle East. And I want to ask you something, Colonel, personally. All the vilification and the arrest and the indictment and the conviction and the overturning of all of that from the 1980s, now that we see what really happened during the so-called Iran-Contra affair, and we now see what's happened in the world subsequent, do you feel vindicated?
Well, it's not so much a matter of vindicated. At least we did it the right way. Look, at the worst, it's not the worst thing that can happen. That's getting shot at and hit. But one of the worst things that can happen to anybody is to be put in a situation where they have to negotiate for the lives of Americans. And I had to do it a bunch, some of which is publicly known. We in our wildest moments, Ronald Reagan would never have authorized somebody to trade 5 vicious murderers. I mean, these are not just war criminals. These people have committed crimes against humanity, and they were locked up and probably would have spent the rest of their lives if the so-called International Criminal Tribunal had ever gotten around to it, and they'd been tried in The Hague. They'd have spent the rest of their lives in jail. They would have been given a death sentence under a military tribunal in the United States. Instead, they're walking around free and gutter right now, command and control. These people got back in the fight as soon as they got on their first cell phone call. And everybody thinks the Americans are omniscient with all the intelligence capacity we've got. We're not. Otherwise, somebody would have forecast what's happening right now with hundreds of thousands of people in the line of fire from an invasion of Iraq.
I know we have a...
So what I'm saying is,
yes,
at the bottom line of it, Ronald Reagan would never have authorized or directed me to go off and do what I did with the exchange of prisoners. And that didn't have to happen here, by the way.
all right.
Bo Bergdahl was not a POW. He was a hostage. Those who held him had nothing to do with the Taliban. All they wanted was money. It could have all ended in the first year. But this administration said, no, we want to flip these terrible people for them, for God knows what reason. And that, too, is backfired on him.
Bo Bergdahl comes back to the United States tonight. He's in a flight, on a flight right now from Germany. He's going to go to San Antonio, your birthplace.
Brooke Army Medical Center.
What do you think will happen to him when he gets here?
I don't know. Here's what should happen. Some general with testosterone needs to stand up on his hind feet and convene an Article 32 investigation, which is the military version of a grand jury. And that grand jury ought to weigh the evidence, people taken under oath, not going on Fox News or television to make accusations. Go under oath. Here's what you know. Here's what you don't know. Here's what you've heard. That doesn't count. That's hearsay. And let this young man either defend himself or plead guilty or face a general court-martial. I mean, that's the right way of doing it. That's justice for him, to him, and for all those who claim that his defection or whatever it was caused other people to get hurt and killed. It's the only fair way to do it.
Oliver North, Counterfeit Lies is the book. Thank you very much, Colonel.
Always be with you. OliverNorth.com. You can get signed copies in time for Father's Day.
There you go. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.